Okay, so this is an introductory video for the Victorian 3 roleplay, Hearts of Dankness. This is essentially this is basically like the rule set and just primary information for those signing up for the roleplay, those who have joined the roleplay, and then those who have any sorts of questions about it. So I'm gonna go through just like the basic properties of any sort of role play. So first of all, obviously you sign up on the forums, you sign up via people who've joined the role play, and we have a period called the land swap period. Basically, when the role play starts, and you join that specific server or round, you'll be as a different nation, or usually you're going to be as the nation that you're supposed to be playing as. However, they're supposed to have slightly different borders. And in order to take care of this, we as role players we go through a process called land shuffling or land swapping, in which we declare war on one another in a controlled manner in order to not take the other person's capital, not destroy them in any way, but just to form the historically themed borders for that specific round. So, for example, I'm going to be joining as Turkey, but I mean as the Ottoman Empire, but there are several nations such as the two province AI state Bulgaria. So I'm going to have to take over that, and that's going to be like all of this whole process is essentially going to be pre-RP. So you don't really have to post any articles. You can ask any questions you have during this period and just chill basically. I mean, if you've done your land swap, you can just chill and wait for the RP to officially start. For those within the Russian and Chinese Revolution scenarios, you guys don't have to do any sort of land swapping. And basically, once you get into the RP, just sit tight, and I'll be announcing on the Daily European that, oh, the Russian Revolution as of now has begun, which means you guys just kill each other basically, or go through diplomacy, or anything that um, of that like basically. I've said basically 3 times now, but who cares? For those going through the Russian and Chinese Civil War scenarios, you are required to send me. I'm going to be the Ottoman Empire. Send me share map. I'll give you shared map of my territories too if you want. I don't really care. But this is to ensure that nobody uses any sort of gold mark or games the system in any way by building things that they aren't allowed to. We've had one person attempt that sort of thing before, and it backfired. So yeah, that's pretty much that. So that's the gist of land swap or land swapping in general, and I'm gonna move on to the primary rules. Any questions for those listening quietly? Hmm. No questions. Hold on, let me see the chat. Oh, let's see. Okay, good, good.
Hi.
Hey, what's up?
Nothing much.
All right, I'm gonna keep going through the game rules, so sit tight. Okay, so the primary rules consist of the starting year being 1923. 2 days within the game is essentially 1 year, so we're gonna be going winter and then summer. So basically January to um, June, and then June to December, or something of that nature. And there are no railguns allowed, so don't build railguns. If I see it, I'll purge you, and so will everyone else. No gold mark usage is permitted. However, I reserve the right to use gold mark to kill you or kill anyone who breaks the rules, basically. I've got the capacity for lots of gold mark. And then we're gonna basically be focusing on land swap first, and that means you don't have to post. I'm just restating the basic stuff. Coalitions are empire based unless specified otherwise, meaning that for the British Empire, Great Britain or Jack can make a coalition called the British Empire with the British flag, and essentially Canada, Australia, or any other vassals of the British Empire can join it. I know there's a limit on coalitions, but I don't know. In that case, you guys can just share a map with one another. The Gunther Isles belong to Germany. They're off limits. The Gunther Isles don't exist in real life. I appreciate the player named Gunther for making the map, but you don't have to include your own fucking. It just triggers me. You don't have to fucking include yourself as islands. Anyways, yeah, they're basically off limits. They don't exist. Just don't attack them. Don't touch them. And no meat shielding. Meat shielding is basically stacking infantry units onto naval vessels in order to stop their morale loss or inhibit any sort of damage to those ships. And that's not really realistic because it's just, you know, it's just not realistic. Yeah. There's no real I don't think there's much of a purpose for it. And that's pretty much it. No stack splitting. There we go. And those who understand that understand a core concept of the game and just don't do it. It's it's very it's very overpowered. And then one battleship per harbor after heavy munition plants are acquired, and this is basically the tech system. I can't fucking speak today. Fortresses are limited to level 1 without the appropriate tech. Factories and railroads are restricted without the appropriate tech for it. Only level 1 forts, level 1 factories, and level 2 barracks can be built in third or fourth world provinces without the ingenuity tech. And I'll be getting into the tech system later on. All alliances are to be made public. They're pretty much free form. Alliances which aren't made public will not be considered valid allies for calling into wars. So you can't just make an ally and just sign an alliance treaty while you're in the middle of a war and then expect them to join that specific war, because that's just bullshit. To limit or stop the formation of super alliances and the Imperium. No, no jokes. I would like to ask you all to not form excessive alliances with those around you. And then there's a double improved development system created by Sarge. And yeah, follow the development system. Yeah, that's that. Oh my god. Okay, so those are the primary rules. It's pretty general. Um, so moving on to the war rules. So there are specific limits to how many provinces you can take within a war, and this is subject to change through both improved logistics, which is a tech upgrade, as well as your national ideology, which I'll also be getting into. So in Europe, you can only take up to 2 provinces. In North America, that's 3 provinces. South America is 4. Africa is 5, and Asia is 4. Once again, there is a forced peace period, meaning that basically consecutive wars against the same nation or any sort of nation is limited to 7 in-game days, which is 3.5 years in RP. So this system is incorporated in order to simulate post-conflict reorganization, and it's to inhibit stacking conflicts. So essentially, what this means is that you can declare war and then fight that war and then make peace. However, from the moment of that peace, you have 7 days to not. Basically, you have 7 days where you won't be able to declare another offensive war. You'll be able to participate in defensive wars regarding your allies, but you won't be able to declare war once again on a different country or the same country because if you constantly declare wars, it's supposed to realistically have an impact on your national morale and your population. So that was just a way to simulate that sort of system. The extended war rules are that wars lasting longer than 7 in-game days are going to be forcibly mediated through the League of Nations, which is the in-game UN, essentially. And the League of Nations will come to a decision, and they will support a side through mediating peace talks. If peace talks fall through, then you can continue war for another 7 days, and this is limited to 15 in-game days total of constant war, where I will have to step in and stop it because who needs 15 days of constant war, really? It shouldn't take that long for a conflict to go on. That's around That's around, I'm gonna say 7 years. So in the game, in RP, basically. Anyways, moving on to annexation. I remember the current player for Italy asked me a question on it, so let's go through this. So a vassal can be annexed every 10 years, which is 20 in-game days, not turns, by a nation with vassals. Um, Only AI or inactive vassals can be annexed by the overlord. And then you can annex only nations with 5 provinces or less. Um, this excludes the what's it called? Just larger vassals in general. So basically, what this means is that if the UK has control of Australia, but the Australian player goes inactive and just leaves the RP or something, and we can't find a replacement for him within 20 in-game days, which I should be able to, in that case, he can annex him. He can annex Australia and become massively overpowered. So you can give away vassals in wars. However, this will be in exchange for taking no provinces from that war. And that same thing goes into trying to vassalize a different country. So that means that if you declare war on a country, I'm going to use the UK again as an example. So the United Kingdom, say, declares war on America. So basically they have the choice. If America is less than 5 provinces, he has the choice of either taking provinces from the US or forcibly vassalizing him. And that should clear that up. Alright, so independence applies for both vassals and colonial nations, which can now declare independence through 2 processes. The first process is that vassals or colonies can primarily gain independence if allowed by the imperial overlord. So you can't really just declare independence out of nowhere. And this has never happened. I don't think anyone's just, let someone else go, but it's an option. And then the secondary process is that if that country is supported by the League of Nations, vassals can declare independence from their overlord once every 50 years for this specific process, at which point they will be at formal war with each other. If they're able to retain their capital province for 7 in-game days, or 3.5 years, then from the start of that revolution, they will have full sovereignty and will be independent. During this process, no other country can declare war on the overlord in an effort to support the vassal, because because. However, they can provide arms and resources, so they can sell materials in order to support those countries. However, the issue is that these arms and resource materials cannot be loaned or returned to nations providing them. So once you give up, say, 5 artillery to support the independence of Canada, you're not going to get that back. So you can sell it to them, though. The League of Nations itself is, it was the United Nations of around post World War One to World War Two. Yeah, around World War Two. And then there were 37 member states in 1923, and therefore there are 37 member states in the RP. And all of those nations are on this list, and all of those nations have a specific sub-channel on the Wiki RP server, which is over here. If you have the LON tag, that means you're in the League of Nations. So yeah, Lucas has the LON tag. Alexiel does. Rick does. Do I have a LON tag? Yeah, I should. Yeah, Turkey was in the League of Nations, I think. I don't see it, but who knows. Anyways, the first secretary of the League of Nations and the initial leader of it is the United Kingdom, Jack. And the League of Nations rules are the following. Each nation has 1 vote. The council meets once every 5 in-game years to discuss significant topics. This will probably coincide with day change in the RP, so that should be the perfect time for it. And only 2 nations can be permitted into the League of Nations every 5 years. So the people who are going to get those individuals in the League of Nations are going to have to be rather careful on who they choose. New leader of the League of Nations is determined by voting every 5 years. Nations can leave at any time, but must go through the entry process, which which is the two nations being permitted. And then in order for international decisions to be announced and accepted, there must be unanimous approval by all nations, excluding abstentions. And then unanimous international decisions that can be made by the League of Nations consist of the following four things, which consist of, well, yeah, declaring an international embargo on a specific country for up to 5 years. And if countries within the LON refuse, they just leave, technically. They can declare international aid, not to exceed £50,000 per member nation, which is a lot of cash. Again, if you refuse any of these unanimous international decisions, you are automatically kicked from the League of Nations and have to go through the secondary entry process. And then they can declare the removal of a nation from the League of Nations for 5 years, and then they can declare the support of a nation's independence. So for this, one nation, well, one colony or vassal can be supported every 10 years, and this is limited to economic forms of support such as arms and resource sales, as mentioned previously. And League of Nations members cannot get directly involved in independence conflicts. So if you're supported by the LON, it opens you up to being able to declare independence. So yeah. The Russian Civil War. So, as you may or may not know, the Russian Civil War was a pretty huge civil war, IRL. And in this scenario, the Russian Civil War is a multi-party war within the what was once the Eurasian Federation. And this happened after the Russian revolutions of 1917, which followed the economic collapse of both Russia and China due to the victory of Japan. And many factions continue to fight in order to determine Russia's political future. So the nations involved are Kuban, the Ukrainian state, the Russian Whites, the Russian Republicans, the Russian, the commies, and then the minor Turkic states. So yeah, you guys are just gonna fight it out, and I'll get into those rules in a little bit. The people in the Chinese Civil War are basically the specific cliques, and the Republic of China and the Chinese Soviet Republic. As you can see from the map over here, these are all the factions that are fighting within this region. Mongolia is a special case. The Mongolian player has the right to join either one of the civil wars, or neither if he chooses to do so. And he's going to send me a message regarding which one he chooses, or if he doesn't choose any of them, before the roleplay starts. So only he and I will know. There you go. Both civil wars begin when they're announced on the Daily European, so you don't just immediately join and try to kill each other. Players are permitted to post articles and roleplay the civil war from that point onwards once I write it on the Daily European. Both civil wars will officially go on until January 1935, which is day 24 of the RP, and factions are untouchable by outside powers until that date. After that specific moment, they are subject to regular rules and regulations regarding province limits and aggressive expansion. Civil war factions are still limited to tech restrictions and can upgrade their technology in the same manner as all other nations. So you're not going to be stuck with the same technology forever. Nations are at constant war with each other upon the game start point, which I announced. And this does not necessarily mean you have to change your diplomatic relations with all of the Russian or Chinese factions, because that would just cripple your fucking morale. So just don't declare on everybody at once. I recommend not declaring on anyone at all and just going for it. Nations are to provide constant share map with me to confirm that Goldmark is not being used to meme and bypass the game rules. And this will go on for both of the civil wars. Nations can't be attacked by any nation and or groups outside of their respective civil war boundaries, which are the dark lines on the map that you can see over here. And then factions within the civil wars are not permitted to attack any country outside those dark boundaries. So basically both sides are impassable. Those lines are impassable terrain. I was going to say something about the civil wars. but I totally fucking forgot. Was it about the borders? No. I mean, I already said like both sides can't attack each other. The people in the Russian Civil War faction can't attack the countries in the Chinese Civil War faction. What else? You guys can. There's no limit on conquering provinces. So essentially, say the Republic of China could kill all of those AI states and attack the Chinese Soviet Republic and the Zili clique and take all of their provinces within like a day, if it, was able to do so. Um, you don't have to formally declare war. Essentially, all I expect you to do is post and win. And oh, yeah, the most important thing. Um, Nations within the Civil War can, I think I wrote it down here. Yeah. So basically, outside nations can sell arms and resources, but they must be posted on the Daily European officially to make sure to allow me to know about them, so I don't accuse that player of gold marking them, and they can't be loaned. So all sales are final. All alliances between factions are considered unofficial. So the Ma clique and the Zili clique can form an alliance, but it won't be official, so they can backstab each other if they feel like it. Um, Backstabbing is to be expected and welcomed. Factions can surrender at any time, and if a faction says, you know what, I'm not gonna stick with the Civil War, I've had enough of this shit, or he loses an entire army and just memes himself, um, he can announce that he wants to become one of the minor nations. That voice crack was very minor. I'm mumbling right now. But yeah, when he announces that he wants to become a minor, he or she, the nation is no longer considered within that civil war and will have to do a secondary land swap in order to take that minor state. So say Tibet says, you know what, I just lost half my army, I don't want to deal with the civil war anymore. He can announce it, he can let us know, and then he can become one of the minor states, which there's a list of minor one province and two province states here. So that includes Singapore, Bhutan, Cambodia, Liberia, um, the Sahara Republic, Belize, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Curacao, the Faroe Islands, and the reorganized national government, which is a one province Japanese vassal. I think um, any other nation can come to me with recommendations or updates to allow minors. Not in that way, but allow minor nations to be formed. For example, Turkey can use Albania as a possible vassal choice, which I will be using and adding to that list. So just let me know if you guys want another vassal choice over there.